brought to you by Thomas Allgaier and Frennis. This edition highlights key LinkedIn posts on future mobility and market evolution in weeks 03 and 04. Frennis supports enterprises with market and competitive intelligence, decoding disruptive technologies, customer needs, regulatory change, and competitive moves. So product teams and strategy leaders don't just react, but shape the future of mobility.
Welcome back. For today's deep dive, we're digging into the first report card of 2026, really, looking at LinkedIn insights from weeks 3 and 4. And, if I had to pick one word to sum up the mood,
Yeah.
it's sobering.
Sobering. That sounds a little grim for the start of the year. I was getting more of a growing up vibe from it all, less hype, more spreadsheets.
That's exactly it. That's what I mean. Sobering, like, waking up after the big party's over and finally checking your bank account. The whole growth at all costs thing, it's officially done.
Right.
The data we're seeing now shows an industry focused on unit economics,
Yeah.
on operational reality, and in some cases, dealing with some really painful regulatory headwinds.
Okay, well, let's get into it. We've got a lot to cover. There's a surprising turnaround in micromobility economics, a pretty stark reality check on the Europe versus China gap in autonomous vehicles,
The big one.
and a structural shift in corporate mobility that might just end up paying your rent.
Yeah, that corporate budget story is a real game changer. But let's start small. Let's start with, the stuff on the street corner. Micromobility.
Right. For so long, the story here was just burn cash, grab market share, scooters everywhere, companies folding. But Braden Joel Jones posted an update on the startup dance that seems to flip that whole narrative.
It really has. So Dance is an e-bike subscription service out of Berlin. And Praben broke down their 2024 numbers. And it's a turnaround story. Revenue was up 29%, hit 8 million euros.
Okay, good growth.
But that's not the headline. The real story is the bottom line. They cut their losses significantly.
And just to be clear for everyone listening, Dance isn't sharing like finding a bike on the sidewalk, is it? It's a monthly subscription where you actually keep the bike.
Correct. It's usage over ownership, but you have custody. And that model was questioned for so long. Investors were always asking, can you make the logistics work? Praben's analysis suggests, yeah, you can. It's a sign that subscriptions are finally, seeing some light at the end of the tunnel.
So you can run a recurring revenue business without just bleeding cash.
If you control your operations, yes. And speaking of operations, the data from Brussels is even more incredible. Martin Lefranc shared some stats on the free-floating shared mobility there that it defies the old logic.
What's the headline?
In 2025, Brussels saw 15 million shared trips.
Okay.
That is the exact same number of trips as 2022, right at the peak of the hype.
So demand is flat. Not great news.
Demand is stable. But here's the kicker. They did it with half the fleet size.
Wait, half. You're saying back in 2022, we had double the scooters cluttering up the city to do the exact same job?
Precisely. Back then, operators were just flooding the zone. Now, with smarter fleet management and, frankly, better regulation, the utilization rate per vehicle has basically doubled. The Wild West era is over. Efficiency won.
That's huge for the cities. Less clutter, same mobility. But it does make me wonder, if you're running fewer bikes and they're being used twice as much, doesn't the hardware just fall apart faster?
That is the next logical problem, isn't it? And it's why we're seeing this big shift in how these things are actually built. I saw John Fay and Balthazar Schieder talking about the new e-bike from Bolt. And honestly, It sounds like a tank.
I saw that post. They literally put a bear on it to test it.
It's a real bear.
A real bear, sitting right on the seat.
I mean, I have to appreciate the marketing commitment there. But what's actually different about it, bear aside?
It's about the design intent. Balthazar's point was that Bolt didn't just tweak a consumer bike. They built this thing from the ground up to be abused. Lower frame, turn signals, AI safety features. The whole point is to make it less intimidating, so anyone feels confident getting on it.
That intimidation factor is so real. If it looks flimsy, people aren't going to ride it. But there's a trade-off, right? A tank is heavy, and heavy kills battery range.
Usually, yeah. But that's where the material science comes in. Hilgo Yang posted about a really interesting technical shift, the move to magnesium.
Instead of the usual aluminum.
Exactly. Hilgo's point was that using magnesium can cut the weight by 18 to 25%, so you can build a stronger, more robust frame without that big weight penalty. It's just smarter engineering.
Okay, so the bikes are better, the business models are getting there, but the regulatory side of things seems to be getting, messy.
Messy is a polite word for it. There's a cautionary tale from New Jersey that Maxime Renson and Brian Oliani were talking about.
This one really had me scratching my head. New Jersey passed a law that lumps Class 1, 2, and 3 e-bikes in with e-motos.
Let's quickly define that. Class 1 and 2 are your standard pedal assist bikes. The kind commuters use. They top out at around 20 miles per hour. And New Jersey now requires, a license and registration for them?
Yes. So if you're a parent who wants a simple pedal assist bike to take your kid to school, you have to go to the DMV, stand in line, register it like it's a motorcycle.
That's a total nightmare.
It kills adoption. That's Brian Olawayani's point. All that friction just destroys the convenience. If you treat a bicycle like a motorcycle, people will just get back in their cars. It's policy totally missing the nuance of the tech.
It really feels like a step backward, but there's another threat that isn't legislative. It's much more physical.
You're talking about vandalism.
Yeah. Lars Christian Gernmolson highlighted the situation in Cardiff, Wales. Nextbite had to pull out of the city entirely, not because the business model failed, but because the bikes were just being destroyed.
That's awful. And it raises a big question. Is that just a cost of doing business?
Lars argues it shouldn't be, and I think he's right. His whole take is that cities need to start treating shared mobility like permanent infrastructure, like a bus stop. You don't shut down the subway because of some graffiti, you protect it.
That's a fantastic point. And it's a great segue, actually, because if we're talking about permanent infrastructure, we have to talk about autonomous mobility.
This was a huge theme, and the consensus seems to be shifting. Zaki Ibiza said that 2025 was the year AVs went from being tech experiments to strategic industrial competition. But there's a huge geographic gap opening up.
The Europe versus China gap.
It's more like a chasm. Dr. Loha Hashimi shared her notes after a trip to China, and for a European, it was a shock to the system.
What did she see?
Operations, not pilots, real scaled operations. She saw delivery drones, AVs integrated into transit hubs, EVs as the absolute default car on the road. She figures Europe is at least 5 years behind.
5 years. In technology, that's a generation.
It is, and it's not just China. Vaibhav Kumar Gupta was highlighting the UAE. Abu Dhabi already has level 4 commercial robotaxis on the Uber app. Right now, Dubai is scaling with Baidu and Uber.
Just to clarify, level 4 for everyone, that means the car handles everything in a specific zone, no human needed, right?
Correct. No driver in the driver's seat within that geofenced area. So while Europe is still stuck debating regulations, the UAE and China are out there collecting millions of miles of real-world data. They're becoming the global hubs for this.
That's a serious wake-up call. But let's look at the consumer side. Even where it is operating, like with Waymo in the U.S., the economics are not what I expected. Ryan Sami did an analysis on this.
Just price comparison piece, yeah.
Right. Ryan found that a Waymo ride costs about 30% more than a standard Uber.
Which sort of breaks the first rule of automation, doesn't it? The whole point is that robots are supposed to be cheaper because you don't pay a person.
Exactly. If it's more expensive, it should fail. But
it's free.
Ryan says 70% of riders actually prefer the Waymo.
Why?
It's the product experience. His insight is that people are paying a premium for consistency. A robot doesn't have a bad day. It doesn't make awkward small talk. It drives predictably and safely every single time.
That's actually a brilliant point. It's the business class argument. You pay more for the lack of friction, the lack of humanity, I guess.
Yeah. It really challenges that core assumption that AI only wins by being cheaper. Maybe it wins by being better. But there's a paradox here. If everyone starts using these things, we could have a huge problem for our cities.
The robotaxi paradox.
Alex Vasiliou and Gunnar Froh were discussing this, pointing to a Deutsche Bahn study. And the simulation showed that if we just do a one-for-one swap personal cars for personal robotaxis, congestion actually goes up.
By a lot, right. Something like 30 to 40%.
Yeah.
Why? Is it the empty cars driving around?
It's the zero occupancy cruising. The car drops you off, then has to circle the block or drive across town to get the next rider. That's a car on the road with nobody in it, just clogging up traffic.
So what's the solution? Just ban them.
The study suggests you change the form factor. The sweet spot isn't the individual car, it's the autonomous shuttle. Think 6 to 12 people integrated with public transport. Do that, and you could actually reduce traffic by about 11%.
So less cyberpunk sports car and more smart minibus.
Exactly. But even with the right vehicle, the tech isn't perfect. Philip Koopman, who is really the conscience of the AV safety world, he noted we're still seeing some serious issues, specifically with Waymo vehicles getting confused around school buses.
Oh, yeah, that's a high-stakes edge case you do not want to fail.
It just shows we're not quite there yet. But let's shift from the vehicle itself to the environment. We saw some amazing updates on how mobility is literally reshaping cities.
This is my favorite part, the big infrastructure plays. And the scale of the Riyadh metro extension that Adib Samara and Nicholas Bonaventure mention is it's mind-blowing.
One of the largest projects on the planet.
They're talking about taking 150,000 cars off the road every single day. But what I love is the thinking behind it. They're not just laying tracks, they're building entire districts around the stations.
It's transit-oriented development on steroids. Instead of building more roads for cars, they're building a city where you just don't need one. But it doesn't always have to be mega scale, right? Brian Wong shared a great example from Zurich, the Whippingen station.
Yeah, that was a redesign of an existing station.
Right, more of a surgical intervention. They just focused on making the transfers seamless, from the train to the bus to the sidewalk. And Brian's whole point was about partnership. The city and the transit agency had to work together perfectly to make it all connect.
It's that last meter of the journey that makes all the difference. And speaking of journeys, we have to talk about the Twiliner. Alexander Lewis Jones reviewed this, and I immediately wanted to book a ticket.
The business class night bus.
From Brussels to Zurich. But it's not just a seat that reclines. You get a proper bed. You sleep. And this is a brilliant part. When you arrive, you get access to a hotel shower and breakfast.
It solves the worst part of long-distance bus travel, the misery. You usually arrive feeling stiff and gross. The Twiliner is all about fixing that arrival experience.
Alexander did have one complaint, though, the vibration.
The diesel engine rumble, yeah. He said if you're used to EVs or trains, you really notice it when you're trying to sleep. But it shows the whole idea of travel is being reimagined.
And that reimagining is happening in places you wouldn't expect, like gas stations.
Thomas Perkman from Westfalen AG wrote about this.
Right.
And it's basically a survival strategy for them.
Because if we all drive EVs, no one's stopping for gas.
Or if you do stop to charge, you're there for 20 minutes, not 2. Thomas's argument is that the gas station has to become a mobility hub.
The Starbucks investification of the petrol station?
Pretty much. Fast charging, good coffee, decent retail, maybe a workspace. They have to become places you actually want to spend time. If they stay pump and pay, they're going to go extinct.
Moving on to our last theme, and honestly, this one probably has the biggest immediate financial impact for you listening, corporate mobility.
This is where it gets real for HR and fleet managers, and the news out of Belgium is it's massive.
A huge policy shift. Hendrik Series and Anthony Barrett were breaking it down. By 2027, it's going to be mandatory for larger employers in Belgium to offer a mobility budget.
Let's unpack that, because mobility budget sounds like corporate jargon. Traditionally in Belgium, the company car is this huge tax-subsidized perk, right? It locks you into driving.
Totally. If they give you a free BMW, you're going to drive it. You're not taking the train.
Exactly. This new law forces companies to offer an alternative. You can trade in that car for a pot of cash. You can spend it on a bike, on public transport, or, and this is the absolute game changer, on your housing costs.
Wait, hold on. I can use my car allowance to pay my rent.
Yes. If you live within a certain radius of your office, I think it's about 10 kilometers, you can use that mobility budget to pay your rent or your mortgage.
That's genius. I mean, think about the incentive there. It literally pays you to live closer to work.
Which cuts your commute, which cuts traffic, which cuts emissions. It's this perfect positive feedback loop.
And are people actually taking this offer?
They are. We're already seeing it. Manuel Lelouch shared some data from Flanders that I almost couldn't believe. 45% of people in Flanders now own an e-bike.
Almost half the population.
Yes. And it's being driven by corporate leasing and these exact kinds of incentives. It just proves that when you align the corporate wallet with the tech, adoption goes through the roof.
And companies are getting it. The old model of just buying a bunch of cars for 5 years doesn't work anymore. Nick Boucher pointed out the big shift towards subscription-based corporate fleets.
Flexibility is everything now. If your workforce is hybrid, you don't want a parking lot full of cars just sitting there depreciating. You want to scale your fleet up or down as you need to.
It all comes back to that theme we started with, maturity. Whether it's Dance focusing on profit, or Riyadh focusing on integrated hubs, or companies using flexible budgets, the industry is just growing up.
We're not just throwing tech at a wall to see what sticks anymore. We're building systems that actually have to work financially and operationally.
So what does this all mean for you? It means the future of mobility isn't some far-off concept. It's happening in the laws being passed in Belgium right now. It's in Waymo's pricing model. It's in the fleet decisions your company is making for next year.
And if you're working in this space, the message from these first few weeks of the year is loud and clear. Operational excellence and smart integrations are what win. The hype is over. Execution is everything.
Here's a final thought for you to chew on. We talked about robotaxis maybe making traffic worse, and we talked about using a mobility budget to pay your rent.
Right.
What happens when those two things collide? Imagine a future where your company literally pays you to live downtown, specifically so you don't have to take that expensive, traffic-jamming robotaxi in from the suburbs. Real estate and mobility are becoming the same conversation.
That's a fascinating connection. The commute, or the lack of one, is becoming its own form of currency.
If you enjoyed this episode, new episodes drop every 2 weeks. Also, check out our other editions on electrification and battery technology, next-gen vehicle intelligence, and commercial fleet insights.
Thanks for diving in with us. Hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what's next. We'll catch you next time.